Hello there YouTube, Devin here again. Today we're going to be talking about Finnish bayonets and what bayonet is correct for your Finnish rifle, because I think there's kind of some conjecture based on the sources you read out there, so we're just going to kind of put it all out there. Now, I by no means have all the examples of these bayonets, as that would get incredibly expensive, and one, the M39, is near impossible to find. As far as an actual one goes, you can find some reproduction ones, but finding a real M39 bayonet's pretty hard to do outside of Finland. So, but the first rifle Finland basically ever standard adopted, not really because they wanted to, but because of what they had access to, and would start a big trend. Basically, they would keep a version of this action in service until the 90s, at least in armory, until the 90s, and that would be the Mosin. The Finns adopted the 1891 Mosin basically at their independence in 1917, and that would continue to be their standard rifle all the way through World War II. They would keep using them because the Finns never really got rid of anything ever. They kept kind of upgrading what they could and using what they could until it really fell apart and you couldn't even really salvage it other than melt it down. But the first kind of upgrade they make to the rifle is in 1924. They basically take those rifles and they put new barrels on them. They take those long 1891 Mosins and they put new barrels on them. Barrels are a much larger profile though, and they, right at the end, they're called the step barrel oftentimes because the barrel has a step in it, so it will still take the standard bayonet that the 1891 takes, the socket bayonet. Now this is the socket bayonet with the little collar on it that you would rotate, rather than the later 9130 bayonet, which has the little spring-loaded push detent that locks it over the front sight. The Finns would use those too, and as well as captured Russian 9130s. So the 1891s and their spikes and the 1924s and the same spikes as the 1891s would serve all the way through World War II, and you would see the 9130 and its spring-loaded bayonet serve all the way through World War II as well, with a lot of them being captured during the Winter War and the Continuation War. So after 1924, the Civil Guard would come out with the 1927 rifle, which was basically a long Mosin-Nagant with a few improvisations to the sights, to the barrel again, and everything like that. And most importantly, they would change to a blade style of bayonet, much like this, about a 12-inch blade for the Americans and the British here, but about 30 centimeters for the people who are metric. So, and that bayonet is able to be used on all the later patterns of Mosin after this as well. So, all the Finn Mosins that have that kind of same standard blade bayonet lug, an M27 bayonet will fit on all of those. So, and then 1 year later, the Finnish army comes out with the M28, which is basically an M27 with a few little changes that they decided were going to be better for them. And that also came out with its own bayonet, which is basically a copy of the M27 with a few little minor changes. So you see, and basically a marking on it, because the Finnish Civil Guard would mark everything SKY, and the Russian army would actually mark their stuff SA. So basically the only difference between the two bayonets when you get down to it, and a lot of those were converted to the bayonet pattern that came after it, because after they kind of decided that the two separate, in 1930, they really kind of decided that the two separate entities of the Civil Guard and the Finnish army really didn't need to have two separate rifles in their own kind of adoption methods for those rifles. They adopted the M2830. The M2830 is an improvement on the M28. Basically, it's basically an M39 that's a little longer. If you were familiar with the M39, and that rifle would continue to be used all the way through World War II, much like the 1891s and the 1927s and the 1924s and the captured 9130s. They would be used all the way through World War II. And in 1935, you see the Finns come out with a consolidated bayonet pattern. This right here, this is the 1935 pattern Finnish bayonet. This one is the kind of rare manufactured example. They were made, most of the Finnish bayonets basically up until this day even are made by basically two companies, Fiskars and Hackman. So those are the two companies that made them. Hackman usually produced less bayonets. Fiskars being a bigger company, they were able to produce a lot more. This is a Hackman example as well as a Hackman sheath. And you could tell an M27 and an M28 bayonet from an M35 bayonet is the M27 and M28 bayonets all have these little kind of reinforcement ridges in the side of the sheath, whereas the M35 bayonet's kind of smooth. So they would be consolidated. A lot of them would be converted to this pattern. And this is basically the most common blade bayonet you will see for the Finns during World War II. They were super well liked. They were really too long and too bulky. The handle is really too narrow to be comfortable. Even my hand, I have relatively small hands, and even like really small hands. And this is a really, really narrow grip bayonet. It's almost too small to be comfortable, and I can see why they really didn't like it. So take it out of the sheath here, and as you can see, now you can find these in the white and blued like this. This one happens to be immaculately blued. This is a Hackman. Once again, I don't know what the oil on it, if you'll be able to see the manufacturer there, but there is the Hackman logo. It is located, if you're looking down the bayonet, it is located on the left side of the bayonet. You see a lot of the Civil Guard ones, and Fiskars, well, basically it's the two manufacturers. Hackman marked theirs on the left and Fiskars marked theirs on the right side of the blade. The blade on these is actually, for a bayonet, quite narrow. I could imagine that these would bend and break quite easily. The fullers on them are very deep and very wide on both sides of the bayonet, so it kind of weakens the blade further, and they have a very aggressive point ground into them, double-edged, just on the point. So the spine is smooth, but then you see that same kind of aggressive edge on the blade. This is a down-facing bayonet too, by the way. A lot of World War II bayonets you see where the reverse edge is sharp, where this one is standard, the bottom edge is sharp. This would be the bayonet used through World War II for the most part. Up until 1943, you would see basically all bayonets pulled from service because the soldiers kind of didn't like them, and they really didn't ever use them as bayonets. They were used as basically tools for knives and stuff like that, but like most of the Finnish soldiers brought their own personal knives to the war to fight with, and they preferred using those more than the bayonets anyway. So in 1943, basically all bayonets were pulled from service. Obviously, there's probably exceptions out there, unfortunately. Now, the M27, M28, M35 bayonets will fit on every one of those rifles. They're all interchangeable. They'll fit on all of them. All of those will fit on an M39. This here happens to be, just so I could prove it to you guys here, a Finnish M39. You can tell by the fact it has the semi-pistol grip. Basically the Mosins before this wouldn't have semi-pistol grips. Later you could probably find some M2830s upgraded with pistol grips and stuff like that, but it's basically whatever stocks they had during the war that they could make and fit, and it's a lot easier to make a straight wrist than it is to make a pistol grip wrist in the stock. But so this is M39 here, and just to show you, this is an M35 bayonet, which came out before the M39 rifle. Fits on there just fine. It's actually a really nice fit. I don't have an M27 bayonet, but an M27 bayonet has been on this rifle just to check it. An M28 bayonet has been on this rifle just to check it. It will indeed fit. The socket bayonets will not fit on these because the sight base is too big with these big sight protectors on it, and the barrel itself is too big around, too wide in diameter to take the socket bayonet. So, but you can fit an M27, M28, M35, and the later M39 bayonet, which is basically this bayonet but with a shorter kind of hunting knife-shaped blade and a much wider grip rather than this skinny little grip. So, but those are basically the bayonets that are used in by the Finns in World War II, and like the Finns didn't really use anything. I could be confusing this because the Finns have a lot of stuff. Oh my gosh, can you read for days on the stuff that the Finns used in World War II and the interwar period, because they never threw away anything. It's like if they had a rifle that needed a stock and a stock that didn't necessarily fit that rifle, they would just throw it on there and make it work. That's not uncommon. So the fact that they updated these bayonets and everything like that to keep serving with all these rifles, even to make sure that they fit the rifles that came after the bayonets, is actually impressive, and I really appreciate that. So I'll show you again right here. So there's the M39, the impressive 1935 bayonet, just so that you guys can see it. I've been trying to find a bayonet for my M39 for a while. As much as I want to have an original M39 bayonet, I can't. So they're near impossible to find, and so I got an original Finnish bayonet to go with my original rifle, and this was actually the most common one used after doing some reading on it. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you all in the future, and hopefully you learned something from this. And if I am wrong, because I have this strange feeling that I am wrong on at least one thing I said in this video, please change that in the comments. I have a lot of Finnish subscribers. A lot of you know a lot more than I do. Please leave that in the comments if I messed up on something that I said. So thank you so much for watching, you guys, and I will see you all in the next video.